Hi, Dakota. All right. Thank you for this written rationale here describing your experience with the assignment. I appreciate that. That really shows me quite a bit about how you're absorbing the material. So thank you. And then thank you for these tips. This is fantastic. Thank you very much. And I totally agree with this. I think keeping your pencil sharp is really important, especially when establishing those contour lines, the hard lines associated with each letter and getting your spacing down. That's a really great tip. And I definitely think using a softer lead to fill is a great tip as well. So good job. All right, so you're talking about ligatures here. Great job using industry specific terminology. Good job there. Yes, when serifs touch, it is called a ligature. The general rule of thumb for ligatures is that you can use ligatures. You can let that serifs touch in anything above display type, which is roughly 12 to 14 points. So if for headlines, magazine titles, etc., it's okay if the serifs touch. You don't want to bring your tracking so close in body copy that they're touching, because that would just create too much density and it would be really, really difficult to read. So yes, in anything above, let's say 14 point or so, it's okay for the ligatures to touch. So in this particular scenario, yes, it's okay for the ligatures to touch. So let's go ahead and take a look. Craft is out of this world. This is fantastic. Fantastic. I'm so impressed with the rendition of these letter forms, which I have right here. And I spent a little time going through each letter, and boy, they're just spot on, just really gorgeous. So great job there. That leaves us with spacing. So we already talked a little bit about word spacing and the importance of word spacing. We talked about that this week, and we can see this is a great example displaying the importance of word spacing, because right now, as you said, this space right here is pretty tight, and it's much closer than this space right here. So what does that do? And that's not a rhetorical question. You should be thinking about, what does that do? And if you're thinking that it separates the word fire from these two words, you're exactly right. That's exactly what it does. So the result is that when we perceive this, our mind says break right here. So the cadence goes from fire and ice to fire and ice, only because there is clearly a space there, right? So that should make sense. And that's a critical point in the word spacing. You don't want to create breaks in the cadence or the saccadic grouping that the mind establishes to organize words and phrases, right? So in order to prevent that from happening, we just really have to watch word letter spacing to make things consistent. So I think the easiest thing here to do is just to close that space down just a little bit. Try to get it as close to even as that as possible. Now you did the same kind of principles apply to word spacing as letter spacing. So it's not going to be identical. It's not going to be the exact same space. You want it to appear as though it's a consistent space. But of course, we've got curves, and we've got open counters, and we've got straights, and we got things that are causing these optical illusions that we have to kind of tweak things a little bit to make it appear as though they're consistent, right? So that's my recommendation for word spacing. The only thing left here is letter spacing, kerning. And I think your kerning is a really, really tight. I think too tight. The space between the F and the I, that's perfect right there. The space between the I and the R is pretty darn good too. But that E is really encroaching on a negative space right in here in this R. And it's kind of trapping that negative space a little bit, especially right there. I would move that out a little bit, that E a little bit away from the R. The A in the end is just about perfect. That D is so close. It's so close. There's almost no negative space. That's almost touching. And I perceive that immediately as being an area that's more dense than the other spacing. There's three areas in this phrase that are more dense than the others. Right here, and right here. And those are more dense because the kerning is too tight, creating a darker typographic color, diminishing the consistency of the letter spacing, and drawing attention to those specific areas, which impedes the grouping or the logical saccadic jump of looking at this from fire and ice to looking at to really keying in on these areas right here. And that, of course, is due to letter spacing. So increase right there, increase right there, increase right there. Okay. I think that's a little tight right there as well, too. You don't want that curve encroaching so much on that open counter that that negative space gets trapped in there. So you want to open that up a little bit, too. All right? Those are my recommendations, and I think that you've done a fantastic job. Now, notice one thing that I said in your word spacing. Notice I said to bring this closer as opposed to saying widen this. Why did I say that? Again, it's not a rhetorical question. If you're thinking that that is going to create, by opening up this space right here, in essence, what you're doing is creating 3 different words as opposed to a phrase, right? That's why I said move this closer and not move this wider. So you don't want this to read fire and ice. Also, you don't want it to read fire and ice. You want it to read fire and ice, right? So that's why I recommend to close that down a little bit. All right, great job. If you have any questions at all, please let me know. I'll be glad to clarify, but I'm really looking forward. This is just wonderful work. Thank you so much. Any questions at all? I'm right here. Thank you.